So now on this gloomy Friday, we have to wait for the stream to fire up all across the fruited plains of the internet before we are able to go ahead and get started. And sometimes it takes a minute or two to connect, but it looks like we're alive and well. And so let's get started, shall we? Hello, my friends, and welcome back to yet another episode of Watching the Watchers Live. My name is Robert Gouveia. I am a criminal defense attorney at the R&R Law Group in the always beautiful and sunny Scottsdale, Arizona. And today we're talking about Steve Bannon trial day 5, and we've got a verdict. Guilty, both counts. Now, this is not a surprise. Many of us have been speculating. We've been basically preparing for this all week, all year, ever since we started covering this trial. But today is the day that the guilty verdict was handed down by the jurors out of the DC Circuit Court. And of course, that means we've got to unpack what happened and really what is going to happen next, because the defense attorney for Mr. Bannon, David Schoen, is now saying, yeah, this is a bulletproof appeal. That's what he said. Bulletproof appeal. And, I'm not an appeal type of an attorney. That's those are the people who are there typing away and researching and writing and all of that stuff. But we've identified, oh boy, a whole slew of serious issues with this trial, and we're going to go through them today. And to do that, we're going to go to our mind map at j6mindmap.com. Now, you can follow along at home if you want to recollect your memory and sort of bounce through a lot of this with us. You can. But as you know, we're talking about Steve Bannon. This is one of the process crimes, not one of the actual J6 crimes. And we are here today. We've got the verdict. It's day 5, and we're going to go through this. You can see the bullet points here have been laid out for us. We've got the docket. First and foremost, we're going to take a look at the actual verdict form. You can see there it is, guilty right there. We're going to take a look at that, as well as the note that came in from the jurors. We've got several exhibit lists that we can see. So the prosecutors and the defense, they both now that we have the trials over, we're going to take a look at their exhibit list. This is, I think, from the defense. And the prosecution's was much bigger, obviously, because they were prosecuting the case. But we'll take a look at those exhibits. We are going to recall the proceedings today because there were closing arguments and there was a lot of argument about the instructions, the jury instructions. And this is where you might see a pretty significant appealable issue coming out of these jury instructions. And so we want to see what some of these arguments look like in court as the case progressed today. Steve Bannon and David Schoen, they were out after the court, and they had about a 5-minute video where we can actually see and listen to them explain what happened before they walk off and walk away. And it's 4 minutes and 54 seconds. So we will go through that in detail so we can sort of see what the reaction is. And they don't seem to be all that upset, to be honest, right? He kind of seems like, well, we're just going to appeal it. And really, that sort of seemed like that was a strategy all along, and we'll break that down. We also now are going to take a look at some of those appealable issues, right? So I know a lot of people are, sort of concerned that, this is the end of the line here. And it very well could be. It could be, right? This could go all the way up on appeal, and maybe it doesn't come back down, and maybe there is not a new trial, but maybe there is. And we've been following this along and closely enough that we have been seeing that they've already been laying the foundation for appeals. And they were doing that even late last night. Like as we were wrapping up the show here, we had the defense team for Bannon. They filed objections to the jury instructions. They filed what's called a notice, because remember, last night, the January 6 hearings, the 8th one, there's going to be more in September, I heard, but number 8 was taking place yesterday when we were on here having an awesome conversation with @Nate the Lawyer on YouTube. And we were, sort of asking ourselves and pondering over this pre-trial publicity problem that Bannon has, because he's in the DC Circuit Court and like right next door where they're doing the Capitol building scam show trial proceedings. Like it's literally going on, like literally as his trial is going on. And that's not enough pre-trial publicity to cause problem. So I don't know what is pre-trial publicity if that's not a problem. So anyways, we'll take a look at that. And then there was this very interesting, very specific problem that the defense had with jury instruction number 27. You can see that right there. And so we've got 3 different motions that we'll go to, and those are kind of going to be the framework for the appeals. That's going to kind of be the, probably the best arguments that Bannon and his team will have to make. We've also got the sentencing date coming up, which will be in October. And so Bannon is out of custody currently. Matt's mom on Locals says, shortest trial ever. It was like a day and a half of testimony. No defense at all. And you can see we're done. I mean, my goodness, like we finished the whole Michael Sussman trial here, if you remember it. I mean, we were doing like some heavy lifting on that one. And we did Ghislaine Maxwell too. Remember that? And this was like, took a nap or something when we woke up and the trial was over. Totally crazy. But we are going to get to it. And if you want to be a part of the show, the place to do that, of course, is over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We've got an awesome community over there. And we are just chatting away. We're sort of talking about, you know, life and the headlines, life, law, politics, all that stuff. And we've got Southland Academy is over there. Zach Nichols he's at a baseball game, actually. He posted a picture. He says, I'm not here with you guys. I'm actually at a baseball game. He's like, I'm not even listening to you, Rob. So he probably doesn't even know that I'm talking about him right now because he's at literally a baseball game. He said, I just wanted to say hi. He's just coming by to say hi. That's the community that we have. And so Zach, he's probably going to hear this later, but he is at a baseball game. And so he's like, you know, baseball's better than this show, which it looks like a fun time. It looks like a nice stadium. Weather looks beautiful. So shout out to Zach. We've got Southland Academy. JC, the Music Man, is in the house. John McGarvey, along with Radice, Tweak, and many others. Albion, Thailand says, good morning. It's 5:16 in the morning over there in Thailand. Good morning, Albion, Thailand. We're glad that you're here with us. Over on YouTube, shout outs to Just Cause, who is modding down the fort. Members Curtis Bartle and John Arnett are there here supporting the show. Shout outs to C. Reed, Crash Bandit. Shane Sousa, I think was first today. I think I saw Shane was in here number one. Shout out to Shane. Truths and Gina Capuano and Crash Bandit and others chatting away on Locals. That's on YouTube as well. Click that join button right next to that subscribe button. I appreciate it. And then, of course, although we have a lot of fun here on this channel, I am a lawyer. We have an amazing law firm in Scottsdale where our team is dedicated to helping good people charged with crimes. We offer free case evaluations, and we would love the opportunity to help anybody. Anytime anybody's in trouble in the state of Arizona, we are the team to help. 480-787-0394. All right. And now, without any further ado, let's really get into the meat and potatoes of the show, shall we? So, as I mentioned when we first got here, we're going to take a look at some of the official forms that came out. This is the jury note that came in. So recall, the jury's sequestered, and what happens is they have to send a letter or a note, something over to the judge. And this got filed, as you can see, on 7/22, which is today. And they said this civil criminal case, they wrote this: we have reached a verdict on both counts. So that was today. I don't know what time that was. Let's see here. It should be written down there. 2:15. 2:15. So I don't know, like an hour of deliberation, not a whole lot of time. So 7/22 at 2:15, signed by the foreperson. The signature, of course, has sort of been redacted there. And then what comes out is this document. Here's what it looks like. This is the verdict form. It says, count 1, contempt of Congress, failure to appear for testimony. Count 1, we find the defendant unanimously guilty. And then count number 2, this is the second contempt charge, willful failure to provide records, right? So the first one, Bannon didn't show up to testify. Number 2, Bannon didn't show up with documents. Signed guilty, again, redacted by the foreperson. So those are the 2 charges there. And those are, that's the entry of judgment. Now, we are going to go through the proceedings that took place today, but I wanted to do a quick recap of some of the exhibits because this is the prosecution list of exhibits. And there's kind of a lot of stuff here. But here, right, you can see part of the problem with these things is we can't really see what's going on in trial. Many people followed the Hollywood saga trial and, all of those things. But those, have visuals. We don't get to see it. So we're all sort of assembling it after the fact. But take a look here. What the first exhibit is. The very first exhibit, you look at this. It's HR 503, House Resolution 503, right there. And you go, yeah, the HR 503, the one that says 13 members, but you don't follow that resolution? Oh, so the resolution that you're not even following, right? That's your basis for your power? I don't think so, because it says shall have 13 members. You only have 8. How many do they have on there? 9. 7 Democrats, 2 Republicans. So it's not their exhibit that they're referencing, this first exhibit. They're not even following the rules of that exhibit, HR 503. Okay, so that you can see, of course, all of this is going to be brought in under Kristen Ammerling. She was the House lawyer. All of this entered into exhibits on 7/22, which is really when there was the testimony. Similarly here, we have the actual subpoena that went to Stephen Bannon, and that's on our mind map. We also have emails about the service of the subpoena. We've got the letter from Costello to Chairman Thompson, which was, I don't think we saw that one yet. So all of these will eventually be out, but I don't think we saw that one. October 8th, we have the letter from Chairman Thompson to Costello. Now, that's the one that we spent a ton of time talking about, remember, because that's the one Costello sends a letter. We're not showing up on the 7th. And after the 7th, Benny sends a letter back and he says, well, we're very disappointed you didn't show up, but we would like it if you still continued to comply with us because we really want that document and your testimony and all of that. And they were arguing, saying that that means that this was all in flux, that there actually was no deadline, that the subpoena was just sort of like a suggestion, not an actual deadline. So that letter made it in. We had the October 13th letter, right? These are all letters back and forth from Bannon's lawyer back to the committee. And part of the theme of the prosecution was that Bannon just ignored the subpoena. Like, it just came in and he just threw it in the garbage like junk mail. Oh gosh. What is this restaurant? Ugh, looks disgusting, right? In the garbage, right? No, you don't know. So the prosecutors are making that argument, but that's clearly not the case. Here, there's multiple letters back and forth. 13th, 15th, 18th, 19th, 24th. Now, finally, we get to the post that the FBI submitted from Getter. Right there's the actual exhibit there. And this is the government document. Let's see if there's anything else here. Yep, there's more. We have another post from Getter. We have a Daily Mail article that links to the Getter account. I don't know if that made it in. We've got a T-Mobile toll records, subscriber records for T-Mobile numbers. I don't know whose phone numbers these are, but they're ending in 1293, 7048. Maybe it's Bannon's, maybe it's somebody else. We've got 1293, 7048, and then David Schoen's statements at a March 16th hearing. So those are the government's exhibits. And that was their exhibit list. I'm not sure whether all of those exhibits made it in or not, but that was what the prosecutors submitted. And you can see, like, not a lot, right? Just about a page and a half. Basically nothing, because this is just a basically scam trial, right? It's a paper trial. It's something where they're just saying you got a subpoena, didn't show up. It's like a driving on a suspended license case. So there's not much to it, which is kind of shocking given the national spotlight that this thing is captured because of the political narrative that is being driven by the J6 committee. So this is the defense list of exhibits, and they didn't really submit any of these, but this is some of the things that they were more or less prepared to exhibit. They didn't present any evidence, so they didn't submit any exhibits at all. They've got the subpoena to Bannon. They've got another subpoena to Bannon. They've got an FBI 302 of an interview. So the 302 is the summation of an interview. So it's sort of like a, police, when you get if somebody gets stopped for a crime or there's a police investigation, they'll write a police report. 302 is sort of like that, but on an interview. So here they actually interviewed Kristen Ammerling, and so they had a document of that from the FBI. Emails from somebody also to Ammerling, transcript of official proceedings, more emails with Ammerling, reserved exhibits 8, and then they're actually referencing the House resolution. So they're actually going back, they're taking a look at HR 8 from the 117th Congress, and they've got different letters and different emails, FBI records, handwritten notes of FBI Special Agent Hart. I mean, look at this. They actually had a lot of stuff prepared, but they didn't use any of it. Letter from article from Rolling Stone, Daily Mail article. These are all the defense exhibits, but they didn't submit any of them. And so they actually had a lot of stuff here. 40 different exhibits. Let's take a look at the prosecutors, because I thought, the prosecutors here. Yeah, interesting. Maybe do I have these reversed? Now, this is the government's. Yeah, this is the government's. The government's actually have less exhibits, right? This is the government. You can see up here. I thought maybe I had them reversed, but this is defense. Yeah, so actually Bannon had more exhibits prepared than the prosecution, which is, interesting there. He didn't use any of them. A lot of them overlap. A lot of them are the same emails that the government was using, but they've also got other FBI 302s and so other things there that we haven't seen. And I don't really know what those are. So that's curious. I would like to see what type of defense they were concocting. Now, there was some interesting stuff that happened today in closing arguments. There was this letter issue that popped up where Bannon and his defense attorneys are making the argument that Benny Thompson's signature that was on the subpoena didn't match the signature that Benny Thompson usually signs. And so we'll take a look at that. Now, here is the thread from Sarah Lynch, and I've explained that she is a reporter over from Reuters, and she does a great job on these hearings. She sort of, she creates these fun threads that are mostly, or if not entirely, apolitical. Let's see what we have today. And so she was there bright and early this morning. We'll read through this before we get into some of the appealable issues and actually look at some of the documents. But there were closing arguments. I mean, there was a lot of conversation happening before we got the verdict early this morning. I still do not have the transcripts. I just got the transcript from yesterday morning, literally just uploaded. They're on the mind map, but they're coming in slow. So I don't have them still today. Let me refresh real fast. Let me do a quick refresh here. Darn it. No transcripts. All right. Well, that's what I thought. Okay. So here we are now. Sarah Lynch is going to be reporting, and she is doing a great job. She's there now. Look at this. She says, "Greetings, America. It's day 6 of the Steve Bannon trial." Well, that's not accurate. Of course, it's day 5. And she says, "Oh my gosh, it's day 5. I need more coffee. It feels like day 1 million. I apologize." And I think she's right about that, right? This was a trial that was not that interesting. It was you had a document and you didn't show up, and they're all fighting about this scam committee hearing and executive privilege and the right to confront your accused. I mean, the whole thing is like it's a circus. It's a bizarro land circus. There's no real rhyme or reason to any of this. And so everybody's just sort of flying all over the place. So she says, shortly before midnight, Bannon's team filed objections to the jury instructions, and we are going to get to those, but not before it's time. So here, Bannon's team just filed something with the court asking to address the mention of last night's hearing. We've got that document as well. And so we're going to get to all of these things here, but I want to get us started a little bit. Jury instructions, a notice of pretrial publicity, and then an objection to jury instruction number 27, which of course all of those will be bases for appeals when we get there. So now they are in court and they're discussing final jury instructions and final edits. They bring the jury in. The judge says, all right. So we've hashed most of this out. Why don't we bring the jury in? And I'm going to read through some of the jury instructions, and then we're going to get to closing arguments. And so they say, okay, great. And the judge, right, the reading of the jury instructions, we're not going to go through those. I didn't even add them to the mind map because they're pretty generic, but they're about 30 pages, right? And most of it is a lot of the same stuff we've covered before, right? Presumption of innocence, beyond a reasonable doubt, what the elements are, the right to witnesses, exclude all of your, external thoughts and all that, and how to actually conduct the deliberations in the jury panel. And most of these don't change all that much. When we talk a lot, extremely important, but a lot of them don't change. So I'm not going to go through the actual entire set of jury instructions, but we are going to talk about the points where there are issues with them, right? Where there are objections that have come in from the defense, and we'll save that for when we get there. So Sarah Lynch is reporting. Judge says, we're going to hear the jury instructions and then get to closings. The key part of the jury instructions is the elements. These are the ingredients that go into baking the cake. The jurors have to go in there and they have to go, we heard all this evidence and all these facts. And were there eggs? Yes, got the eggs. Was there flour? Yes, got the flour. Was there whatever else goes in a cake? I don't know. What sugar? Did you put sugar in there? Yeah, we did. Okay. That's enough for a cake, therefore guilty. So here, those elements, and we spent a lot of time on this yesterday, but here, the jury must find each of the following elements. The defendant was subpoenaed, right? He got a subpoena. They wanted testimony and documents from the subpoena. He didn't comply with the subpoena, so that there was a breach, and then that breach was willful. It's kind of those 4 ingredients, right? There was a subpoena, it was for something, there was a breach, and it was a willful breach. And we've gone through that at length. So now, the judge gets through the jury instructions, and the jurors are like, oh my gosh, can we get on with it? And they say, yes, we can. So they say, government prosecutor, you're up. Molly Gaston, I think is how you say her name, which is, I think, how Gaston said it from Beauty and the Beast. So she's now up, and she's going to be delivering the closing arguments for the government. And we haven't really heard a whole lot from her. Most of this case has been handled by Amanda Vaughn. But now Gaston is up, and she says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, this case is not complicated, but it is important. This is a simple case about a man. A man, that man, she says, pointing to him, that man right over there, Steve Bannon, who didn't show up. And why didn't he show up? He did not want to provide the January 6th committee with documents. He didn't want to answer questions. And when it really comes down to it, he did not want to recognize Congress's authority or play by the government's rules. Now, I can't resist, but I still don't know what their authority is. I've heard from many people, Nate included, and others, that somehow Congress voting on H.R. 503 ratifies it somehow. I don't know how that happens, because if you vote on H.R. 503 and H.R. 5, and you say, I approve of H.R. 503, I love H.R. 503, sure. But I love H.R. 503 when it's being followed, right? When it actually has 13 members, 8 of whom are Democrats, 5 of whom are Republicans, then I'm all behind H.R. 503 if they follow the rules. But they're not following the rules. And so you sort of have, a legitimate constitutional crisis kind of within the House of Congress, because they've passed rules, the House voted on the rules, but they're not following their own rules. So it just feels like anybody can just do whatever they want in the House. You can go into a car dealership. You can say, I'd love to buy a car. What do you have for me here? And they say, we've got this beautiful 4-door car. It's got 4 wheels on it. It's beautiful. And you say, perfect, I'll take it. And they say, well, you can't have that one right here, but come back tomorrow. We'll have the same car here for you. 4 doors, 4 wheels, just pay for it right now. You say, no problem, I trust you, I'll be here. You make that contract. You sign the deal. You show up the next day to get your 4-door, 4-wheel car. And you paid for it. You agreed to it and you're excited about it. But guess what? There's only 3 doors on it. And there's only 1 tire on it. And it's not actually the same car. But you go back to the dealer and you say, what the heck? And they say, well, it is a car though. And you already agreed to it. Even though it's not the full car, even though it's missing 3 wheels on it, you already agreed to buy it. Therefore, it's yours. And I don't know how you can run a country that way. If you can just say, we're just going to have whatever number of committees we want, members on the committee that we want. It doesn't work, because, as I said, the Republicans take over, and Matt Gaetz and others, they just form their own committees and they go investigate the Democrats. And who cares if it's legally constituted or not, because the courts will honor it under the separation of powers doctrine. And as long as the Congress is in cahoots with the executive branch, okay, as long as they're both in sync, they can get away with whatever they want. And the Democrats have set precedent for this. So it's pretty insane, but all right. Now, I don't recognize the Congress's authority over this situation. I don't know how they can justify it. I still have not heard a good explanation on this, but I understand why the courts can't rule on it. Our government, says the prosecutor. Let me get back into it. Molly Gaston is saying, hey, ladies and gentlemen, our government only works if people show up. I talked about that on our walk and talk this morning. Okay. It only works if people play by the rules, and it only works if people are held accountable when they do not. Molly says, ladies and gentlemen, January 6th was a dark day. A mob attacked the Capitol. The committee had reason to believe that Bannon might have information about the events leading up to that day. This document, she's waving around the subpoena. She says, this document right here, it's not complicated. It's not hard to understand. She said it tells him what he is required to do and when he is required to do it. And Bannon's talking about privilege, saying that he doesn't have to show up. But that could not possibly cover everything that he had. And she shows a social media post from Getter. She says, look over here, ladies and gentlemen. He's celebrating in defiance of this January 6th committee. He's saying it's going to be war. In fact, his whole podcast is called War Room. He has an entire room of war. She says, this is not a mistake. He is celebrating his defiance. And the committee advised the defendant of the consequences, and he continued to defy it. He knew about this. He was on notice. He got the subpoena. She says, think about it this way. What happens if you got a parking ticket in Washington, D.C.? Steve Bannon gets to park his car and there's a pink piece of paper under his windshield. Steve Bannon thinks that he can go ahead and comply, right? And that is, he can pay it, or if he thinks he has an excuse, he can give an explanation to the parking ticket office. But if the DC government rejects his excuse, that is it. That's the end. That's how it works. But Bannon didn't follow that strategy. The defendant made a deliberate decision not to comply. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is contempt. It is a crime. Gaston says this was no accident. The defendant here disdained Congress. He thought it was beneath him. He did not show up. Now, there is nothing political about finding out why January 6th happened. I wonder if they were laughing in the courtroom. There is nothing political about finding out why January 6th happened. It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be political, but it is. And making sure it never happens again. You like that language? That means all Trumpers have to be eliminated. Like they're on record saying that. Gaston continues. She says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you might be sitting there thinking that this is just a small violation. Like this is just a technical thing. But nothing could be further than the truth. And that's why, ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking you to find him guilty. And the judge says, thanks, Molly. All right, next up. All right, Evan Corcoran, you're up. So Evans takes a stand and he says, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, none of us will soon forget January 6, 2021. None of us. But there is no evidence in this case that Steve Bannon was involved at all. And even if you think in hindsight that the path that Bannon took and the path that his lawyer took, Mr. Costello, if it turned out to be a mistake, you may think that. And that's okay. But that mistake was not a crime. Now, Bannon made some January 6 predictions. And he made the same prediction that every other media outlet made. And witnesses made the same. A lot of people were saying that all hell was going to break loose. A lot of people were saying this thing was going to get rowdy. It was a protest. He said the same thing as everybody else did. Everybody confirmed that. But that's not a crime. And that doesn't mean he's involved. And if there is a reasonable doubt, you must find Steve Bannon not guilty. A reasonable doubt about this. A reasonable doubt. Any one of them. Pick one. Not guilty. Now, the government objects here. Evan is continuing his closing. He says, ladies and gentlemen, Steve Bannon, when he got a subpoena, he never got copies of this document that's supposed to be there. And the prosecutor says, objection! You can't talk about those House rules. Says, objection, judge. He's objection and probably a sidebar. And now they go up and they get in front of the judge. The government objects and the judge sustains the objection. And they're now on the husher. So the judge says, get on the mics. And then they push the psh button. Psh, and you can't hear anything. It's all that white noise. And then they talk on the phone. You can't hear the judge. The jurors can't hear the judge. It's like a loud white noise that fills the room. But you can hear it if you're close to the mics. So he starts to bring up the idea again that Bannon didn't get those documents. Remember, as part of the House rules, it says if you serve somebody with a copy of a subpoena, it's supposed to have a copy of the House rules that say this is how subpoenas work in the House of Representatives. And when Bannon allegedly got the subpoena, it didn't include those documents. Like it's supposed to have a whole list of things to do. It's like, you get a ticket. And it's like, okay, call here and call there and all of that stuff. And Bannon didn't get that. And so the defense is trying to bring that up. And the prosecution objects. The judge sustains it. So they come back now. And Corcoran is showing copies of the letter now from Thompson to Robert Costello. He says, all right, and ladies and gentlemen, and I want to show you this exhibit. It's already been admitted as evidence. And here's a signature. Look at this copy of this letter from Thompson and Costello. Now, he then takes a copy of the signed subpoena that was signed by Benny Thompson, right? The same subpoena that Steve Bannon got, and the same letter from Thompson to Robert Costello. He takes the subpoena, he puts that up on the screen. He takes the letter and he puts that up on the screen. The jurors are sitting there looking at these two letters. And the prosecutor's like, what the heck is he doing over there? And the judge doesn't know either. And these two letters are up on the screen and he says, now that you're looking at these letters, it really makes you wonder whether the signature is legit. And objection! And the judge screams, sidebar again. And they call him back up there, right? And the white noise goes on. Shh. Nobody can hear what's happening. They go back up and the judge is like, are you trying to make the argument, Mr. Corcoran, that there was an illegitimate signature? Are you trying to say that Benny Thompson's signature is not legitimate? So Corcoran comes back and he says, ladies and gentlemen, when you're considering whether the case has been proven beyond a reasonable doubt, you need to consider all the witness testimony, and you need to consider not only what they say, but how they say it, and whether they're credible at all. He says, ask yourselves, if Kristen Ammerling, the star witness, the counsel for the January 6th committee, ask yourself, if she is someone who is used to getting their way, ask yourselves about her. You saw her up here. You think she is someone who is used to getting their way? The question is why? Why was Steve Bannon singled out of all these people? Corcoran says, isn't it weird? It's kind of strange, isn't it? The first time in Ammerling's 20-plus year career that she was ever a witness in a case like this. Pretty strange. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm asking you this because I have a question for you. I need to ask you whether or not in any way this case was affected by politics. When Ammerling was up here, she didn't listen to Steve Bannon's reasonable request. You heard from her that the committee should either ask the courts or Trump to negotiate on terms about Bannon's testimony. They want Bannon to come in. The committee has the affirmative duty, says Corcoran, to go and figure this out. Go to Trump and see whether Trump, if they can hash out the executive privilege restrictions. Because remember, Trump was limiting Bannon from speaking, according to Bannon's side. And Bannon is saying, go talk to Trump. I'm happy to talk to you. But he's the one who put the force field up, and I can't deal with that, so go talk to him. And if you can't talk to him, then go talk to the courts and get an actual order for me to come in here, not from your fake committee. And in that conversation, Bannon is saying, we made reasonable requests to Miss Ammerling. We sent a lot of this back and forth. The committee should either ask the courts or talk to Trump. And he says, ladies and gentlemen, they didn't do that. They're going after Bannon because Kristen Ammerling is biased because she's a woman who gets her way. And she singled him out for political partisan reasons. She says, what human being wrote the subpoena? Got a lot of questions about this. Kristen Ammerling says she might have written it. Benny Thompson says she may have written it. Says these are straightforward answers, ladies and gentlemen, straightforward questions. And she didn't want to answer any of them. Now, in America, we have to give Steve Bannon the benefit of the doubt because of the presumption of innocence. And Miss Ammerling has a relationship with one of these prosecutors sitting right here. Can you believe this? She has only worked for Democrats in her career, and she has only given to Democratic causes. And says, make no mistake, I'm not against book clubs, by the way. But I got to tell you this, ladies and gentlemen, the book club here, it's comprised of Democrats and their social connection has been downplayed. Okay. These people all get out there and they read Bob Woodward books or something. Evan continues. He says, why is she trying to hide? Why did she tell you about her personal connection to the prosecutor and from the FBI? They all had Democratic backgrounds. They're all big lips. And all, I don't know how useful this is because all the Democrats are like, oh, those perfect. I wonder what book club that is. These are DC jurors, right? So they're all sitting there going, oh, book club sounds nice. I wonder if they read anti-Trump books. I'd love to join. Can I get the name? They're like, hey, Molly, can I talk to you after the verdict? Where do you guys meet at Starbucks or where do you go? I don't know. I'd love to be there. So Yeah, so he's just like sort of, yeah, these people are all your team. He's sort of communicating to them. These are all Democrats. They're all your best friends. Did Steve Bannon commit a crime? Asks Evan of the jurors. He didn't intentionally refuse to comply with the subpoena, okay? He did not do that. Absolutely not. Bannon tried to remove the obstacle to testifying. He was actually working with his attorney to try to solve this, and there are letters flying back and forth all over the place. Multiple different emails and different letters. And says there is no magic to those dates on the subpoena. October 7th, October 14th, they put them on there. But there's no rhyme or reason for that. They didn't even know why they put those dates on there, and they don't even know who wrote the subpoena or who made the decision to put them on there. And that is why it's not valid. He says, just to be clear, ladies and gentlemen, we didn't put on a defense in this case. Okay, I'm telling you this right now. We didn't put on a defense. Why? Pretty easy. It's the government's burden. It's all on them. We didn't feel a need to put on a defense. We didn't have to show you anything. He said, this case is like being called in for jury duty. You're here. Imagine if you could show up, he says. Imagine if you could be here. And Gaston says, objection, judge, calls for speculation. This is a hypothetical. He can't do any of this. And the judge says, all right, hold on a minute. Take it easy, Molly. Come on up here. They come out to the podium. He hits the buzzer, and they're talking about it. Corcoran comes back out. He says a sentence, and he says, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That's his closing. Now, remember, because the prosecution in America basically has every single advantage under the sun, not only endless money, endless supply of people, student loan forgiveness, all sorts of expert witnesses all over they have the entire infrastructure. They also feel like they should have two closing arguments, right? It's only fair because they've got a real strong burden of proof. Yeah, it's really difficult for you guys. So they need two closing arguments just to make it fair. So they do. They come back and they get a rebuttal close. And now Amanda Vaughn is going to be doing this one. And Amanda comes out and she delivers this one. So they get two cracks at this. So Amanda's here and she says, ladies and gentlemen, the defense wants to make this hard, okay, and difficult and confusing. They want you to wonder, what am I missing here? But let me tell you this. You are not missing anything. This is not difficult. This is not even hard. There were two witnesses because it literally is as simple as that. That's it. Your eyes are not deceiving you. It is really this simple. Don't overly complicate this. Let me show you what I mean. She holds up another October 8th letter. Oh, it's actually a post from Steve Bannon's account announcing his defiance of the subpoena. She holds it up right here. She says, how could this not be more clear? Look at this. He yelled it from the mountaintop. She says he came out and specifically said that he stands with Donald Trump. Oh, I was wondering if they could get through this trial without mentioning his name. And of course, that's obviously not possible. So every single Democrat on that jury, they're like, wait a minute. He said, wait a minute. This guy, I don't care about the subpoena. I don't care about the 7th, the 14th, January 6th. I don't care about any of this crap. Did you just say that Steve Bannon said that he made a decision to stand with Donald Trump? He said what? Okay, well, he should get the death penalty for that, as far as I can tell. So death penalty. Yeah, good. Death penalty, judge. No. It's not that kind of case. I know, but the death penalty is. We voted. We're the jurors. Sorry, do it. So this goes on. He says, this is Amanda Vaughn. She says, he made that choice to stand with Donald Trump. She's really, you know who I'm talking about. Donald, And all the jurors are like, oh, he's done. Sarah says, that is like a child continuing to argue with their parent after they know they're grounded. She tries to poke holes in Costello's bid to convince prosecutors not to file charges, saying he never told them that Bannon made a mistake. Bannon's defense lawyers weren't even trying to make that argument, saying this, and she says, this is not a mistake at all. This is a choice. It's contempt. It's a crime. He knew he needed to be here and he didn't show up. And so, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please do not be fooled by the recent letters and his sudden decision to comply, right? Steve Bannon came out and said, yeah, I'm happy to testify. Don't buy that. All that is a ploy. Okay, he's just trying to play you guys. That letter, which they provided to you, tells you everything you need to know, ladies and gentlemen. Just go in there and read it. Just pull it up. Just read it. He willfully defied the subpoena, and his 11th hour offer to testify is just a waste of everyone's time. And don't let him pull the wool over your eyes. These are the hard facts in black and white on paper. She says, don't even read. You don't even need the witnesses, actually. I didn't even need to call anybody in here. All you need to know is take a look at the documents. She says, these defense lawyers here, they're just nitpicking. Signatures, they're saying they've got some problems with the signatures of Benny Thompson. Were they handwritten or were they electronic? She points to the emails where Costello confirmed receipt of the subpoena. So she says, what are we talking about here? About signatures? Okay, his lawyer got the subpoena. It came from the committee. They're trying to mince words here. She makes fun of the defense for asking what human selected the dates. She says, and you just heard from Mr. Corcoran. He came out here and he said, we're not even sure what human put the dates on there. As if they were selected by a computer. Pretty silly. They're trying to focus on things that don't matter. They want to talk about this book club, saying this is all just a distraction. This is a committee, she says. This is a body. Okay, they can do what they want. They have the power to. This talk about book club is ridiculous. She's asking, I don't even know why they're talking about politics. This case is not political at all. I told you that during my opening arguments. And ladies and gentlemen, it's critical that you understand that Bannon is not the decider of the law. He doesn't get to make a decision about whether he shows up or not. And so that's why you have to find that he is guilty. And that's it. That's the closing arguments. Now, the judge is going to give instructions on this. He says, okay, thank you, Amanda. All right. Okay, have a seat. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you instructions now. Please note that I did sustain some objections, and those statements should not be considered. Okay, so just follow the instructions I gave you. Also, please do not consider whether the J6 committee gave Bannon the copies of the deposition rules. Okay, that came out in the closing arguments, but that's not to be considered. And she says, juror in seat number 12, you're gone. Thanks for your service, but get the heck out of here. And he says, I cannot tell here. Sarah says, I don't know what juror that was. Says originally it was a man that works as an art dealer, but I think another female juror had already been excused for health reasons. I do not know if the seating ever shifted. And they're off to deliberate. Sarah gives us a breakdown. She says, okay, I can see the jurors now. It's 8 men, 4 women, radio silent since 11:40. So they're getting lunch. So, okay, so we have a timeline now. Okay, because we had the verdict, which was set in at about 2:15 p.m. because we know from the juror's note, that's when it came in. So 11:40, let's say they go and get lunch. So they come back at 12:40. They settle in about 1. They deliberate for about an hour, maybe, before they send the note. Guilty's all around. Boom. Fox News reporter saying court staffer told him there's a jury note. Prosecutors are back. We're waiting to hear more. Court official came out. Judge says we're here. Breaking. Jurors convicted him. Right now, I very much appreciate your service, says the judge. Now you are discharged. And that's it. We have at 3 p.m. on October 21st, the sentencing date. So Steve Bannon will come back and be sentenced. But the judge is leaving without addressing the motions, without addressing those motions for a judgment of acquittal or a motion to dismiss the indictment, which were both of those motions we talked about yesterday. So what? He just left. It's Friday. He's like, ugh. What time is it? It's Friday. I'm getting out of here. Where's happy hour? I'm out of here. I'm done. Dumbest trial ever. So now we've got a little bit more work to do here because we've got Steve Bannon's reaction to this. We have the bases for appeals. But of course, I really want to thank Sarah Lynch, who did an awesome job on this trial. We really pulled a lot from her. We pulled a lot from Jay Halpe, who did some of the transcripts yesterday. And I have everybody linked here on the mind map at j6mindmap.com. So ensure that you're following all your content creators, the people who are doing the reporting on this, because we couldn't do it without their reports. All right. And so Bannon now, right, he comes out and we get some pretty serious reaction from him. Let's check in on, well, let's do this. Let's go through the appeals first. We'll go through these relatively quickly, and then we'll wrap it up with Bannon before we jump into your questions and your comments. Here are the jury instructions. Here's the jury instruction objection. Okay. So as we talked about yesterday, actually, I have this up on this format so that I can actually color on it, or draw on it, color on it. What am I, like 6? All right, here we go. So this is now the document. This is the notice from Bannon that they objected to those jury instructions. Okay, so Bannon got convicted, but before he got convicted, they were objecting to this. Okay, so this is where Bannon, right, if he's going to be making an appeal, it would be on these bases. Part of the reason why they didn't present any evidence, in my opinion, why they didn't call a case, is because they want to appeal. All the eggs are in the appeal basket. And that means that before the verdict came in, they had to almost, lodge all of the appealable potentials before the verdict came in. So here is the actual argument. And they tell us, Judge, look, the jury instructions are problematic. We're objecting to these, and this is telling the judge, we're going to appeal all of this, so just so you know. It says, during a hearing held back in July 21st, so that was yesterday, the court provided the parties with the jury instructions and told us to look at them. The court also entertained instructions about a proposed instruction by the government and instructions by the defense. Bannon entered objections into these jury instructions, and now we're re-raising those here. Previously, Bannon sent an email to court chambers saying that we've got some issues with this case. And Bannon, through counsel, made additional submissions related to jury instructions. Here are our problems. Instruction number 13, objection. Bannon says this instruction, read in full context, does not adequately reflect the jury role for the presumption of innocence, right? It's just a presumption of innocence argument. Didn't like that. The defendant is presumed innocent, and this jury instruction doesn't reflect that. Bannon also, under instruction 17, says this is a problem. That we object to the verdict form when it has been made. 24, talking about objection to instructions saying that the conversation about this willfully making a default is not appropriate. The court saying that this instruction is usurping the jury's role, that the jury is the entity that's supposed to be making these decisions, not the court. Similarly, so you can see sort of the pattern here. They're just going through every single one of these instructions, and we're just objecting to them. Here's an interesting one about the deadlines, October 14th, saying that instruction number 24 entirely omits the relevant dates. So the instruction, it's telling the jurors you have to sort of apply these dates, but it's not happening because it's not actually in the instructions. As asserted during the hearing, for example, if the jury were to find the defendant failed to provide testimony on a date other than the 14th, he must not be found guilty under count 1. Okay, so it's saying, they're saying the only date that can be a breach is the 14th, while they're saying the instructions are extending that date, saying that sort of this language by is different, right? You sort of deadline on or a deadline by, those are different because one is limited to only one day and the others have a bigger hula hoop. Okay, so you can see, I just kind of want to show you the structure of this. I'm not going to go through all 11 pages of this document, but these are all of the objections. Now, some of these, I think, will carry some heft to them and others will not. This big one here is talking about 24 and about willfully prongs and about, willfully is really reflecting back to the mens rea and whether Bannon was intentional in refusing to comply with the subpoena. So that was the jury instruction objection. Now, there's also this instruction that came in today. So that one was on the 21st, yesterday. This one came in this morning, and this one's really short, so we'll sort of skim through this one. After the closing arguments were completed, the court gave an additional jury instruction. So we just read through those closings. And without having a copy of the instruction or a real-time transcript, we can't quote directly. So, they're submitting this today. in real time. However, they say, a specific part of the instruction to which the defense objects relate to a court's comment concerning the discussion of the rules during Corcoran's closing argument and the objection to it. So Corcoran was making a closing argument and there was some objection, and the defense is like typing away this objection, notice of the objection, like rapidly. So the defense is saying the court and the instruction that came out implied, if not outrightly asserted, that the argument was improper and should be disregarded. Respectfully, the defendant does not believe that instruction was appropriate and believes it unfairly targeted the defendant's closing arguments and that it risks unfairly prejudicing the jury, because it sounds like the judge scolded them a little bit, maybe too hard. So it continues. It says, the argument at issue is regarding a factual issue concerning a provision of the rules, Section 3B, and Amerling testified accordingly. And we say the argument on this issue at close was a proper argument. It was justified. Let's take a look at this. What is the argument? Okay, here it is. This goes back to the copy of the rules. Remember, there was the objection about whether they had to include the copy of the rules with the subpoena. First, this was one area where the court suggested a pretrial ruling might be an area the defense can pursue. So the judge said you had permission before trial started, and now, judge, you said that we can't make the argument in closing arguments. You gave us permission, and then you scolded us at the end, and that made us look bad, and we're angry about it. Second, there was testimony at trial concerning this dispute. Even Mrs. Amerling brought it up. She said specifically in her testimony that Bannon was not provided a copy of that paragraph on that day. And therefore, because you told us we could say it and because it actually did pop up in trial, we made the argument in our closing arguments and you shut us off. And judge, that is going to unfairly prejudice the jury, and that's going to be a basis for appeal. The argument on this issue at close was proper and it was justified. Number 27, to the extent that it focused on the rules and closing arguments, it directed the jury to ignore the argument or suggested the defense did something wrong. And therefore, it was unfairly prejudicial and in violation of the defendant, Steve Bannon's constitutional rights. Therefore, we want the court to make notice of this, and they're going to be appealing this moving forward. Yeah, so that's a pretty good one. Now, lastly, but not leastly, we have this objection, which was also filed today. And this is a notice of the congressional hearings that took place. So remember that yesterday when we were wrapping up the show, Bannon was on day 4 of his trial, but the committee was on hearing high school pep rally number 8 for their scam show trial hearings. And Bannon has been the subject of these hearings for a long time. And talk about pre-trial publicity. I don't know how you can get more pre-trial publicity than 8 January 6 hearings back to back. I don't know. But the defendant now is making notice of this. He's saying, look, judge, I know you know this, but I'm writing this down into the record so that it is unequivocal that there was a hearing taking place while we were in the middle of our trial. It says, at the pretrial conference above, the question of how to bring the court's attention to congressional hearings occurred, and we had issues about publicity and the impact on the jury. The court says, look, I'm going to consider the defendant to have a continuing objection. Okay, it continues all the way through. And that any additional relevant evidence would be raised either by motion or a notice identifying the matter. And so that's what we're doing right now. During the primetime television viewing hours beginning at 8 p.m. on July 21st, yesterday, and widely broadcast across cable and network television, select committee hearings were conducted in the same manner as we already told you about. On July 21st, there was a featured segment of Stephen Bannon of a particularly inflammatory nature. The day before the jurors go to deliberate, the J6 committee hearing, during primetime American TV time, it is broadcasting literally Steve Bannon. What do they broadcast? The nature and substance of the segment present a significant cause for concern and prejudice to Bannon and his constitutional rights. The question is how to address the matter. Now, this case is at a stage in which evidence is closed and the trial is going to move into closing arguments. And during the proceedings held on the 21st, outside the presence of the jury, a concern was raised in advance about the broadcast and about the hearing. And a discussion was had amongst all parties about whether the court would address this matter at all. The court addressed the matter by reminding the jury to not again watch TV, etc., consistent with the views that the defense that this would be the most prudent way to handle this development, rather than highlighting it. increasing the chances that once highlighted, it would become a factor in the jurors' minds, right? So the judge said, hey, just don't watch TV. The judge didn't say, don't go watch the J6 hearings, because then the defense is going to say, oh, Judge, you're making this now a J6 case, and we don't want this to be a J6 case because it's not. It's a subpoena case. The defense continues to believe that the court handled it in the most appropriate way under all circumstances. But at the time of the discussion as how to address this matter, the exact substantive coverage of the widely advertised primetime hearing was not known. Now that we know that it was a highly inflammatory segment, so he's saying, look, Judge, you couldn't have known about this, and you did what you did based on what you thought that they might present, but it is the scam hearing committee, so who knows what's going to happen. But we thought what you did was prudent. But the hearing has been conducted. Now that we know they kind of really rubbed his nose in this thing, we got to address it. So now, since we see this highly inflammatory segment, the question arises as to whether the jurors should be questioned about any exposure to the piece. Did you see anything about this? Did you watch this at all? Did you turn on the news? Did anything pop up during a commercial? Were you on YouTube? An associated concern is whether a juror might be reticent to acknowledge having seen the broadcast or having heard about it, or if he or she might have accidentally run afoul of the rule and be in trouble of the court. And so the defendant, Steve Bannon, and his lawyers, they respectfully request that the court address this matter with an inquiry, assuring the jurors about the importance of candor and that they're not going to suffer negative consequences if they saw this hearing. The defense would also like to give the court notice that CNN, that upon information and belief, has advertised that it is rebroadcasting its documentary, a special report on Mr. Bannon that aired on July 17th. They're rebroadcasting it on July 22nd. Right? These people, they know exactly what they're doing. They're rebroadcasting it when the jury is deliberating. Because they are scum, right? Okay, so now that is the final hearing, or the final notice that came out from the defense. Those three, of course, are filed and lodged directly with the court, and those are going to be strong bases for appeals. Now, we are going to take a look at Bannon and David Schoen's reaction, and then we're going to get to your questions and your comments over from watchingthewatchers.locals.com. And you can see Kenny 1B, Jeremy C, we got Kenny Cole, and others are already over there. So get those comments submitted, and we'll get right to them here in a second. But first, here is Steve Bannon now. Steve Bannon, I got to tell you, he's a pretty reasonable loser here. Listen to him. He sounds really good.
Thank you. I want to start by thanking the jury. We respect their decision today.
Hey!
I really want to thank those hardworking citizens of Washington, D.C. that had to take an entire week off to go through this. So their thanks. We respect their decision. We may have lost a battle, but we're not going to lose this war, okay? David Schoen's going to talk here in a second about exactly what the jury heard. They came to their conclusion, right, about what was put on in that. David Schoen's going to talk to you about our appeals process. But listen, in the closing, the prosecutor missed one very important phrase, right? I stand with Trump and the Constitution, and I will never back off that, ever.
This didn't seem.
All right, so yeah, so he was making a point about that comment, right? He stands with Trump, and he wanted to, that prosecutor was just confirming to all the jurors, he's a Trumper, you know. So even if you don't know anything about what I said, who cares? He's a Trump guy. Like, he's got a MAGA hat at home, okay? So just throw him in prison. And they go, oh, gotcha. No problem at all. Happy to do it. But a pretty nice, you know, sort of a gracious statement. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. You just convicted me, but I appreciate your work and, you know, nice, good DC citizen. So thanks for being here. Have a nice weekend. So now we're going to hear from David Schoen, who is going to come out and tell us that these appeals and these issues are bulletproof.
Like the misdemeanor from hell, Mr. Bannon. What happened?
I thought it was pretty good hell.
This is round one. That's what happened.
They said the question was, where was this misdemeanor from hell, Bannon? I thought you were going to get out there and really cause havoc. And Bannon says, I think it was pretty good. I think it was actually pretty good. He's actually pretty happy with their performance. And then David, his defense lawyer, says, buddy, is round one. Okay, so take your little snarky comments and shove it.
Misdemeanor from hell, Mr. Bannon. What happened?
I thought it was pretty good hell.
This is round one. That's what happened. This is a bulletproof appeal. Have you ever in another case seen a judge 6 times say in the case that he thinks the standard for willfulness is wrong? He said
No.
it doesn't comport with modern jurisprudence. He said it doesn't comport with the standard, the traditional definition. But he said he feels his hands were bound by by a 1961 decision. You will see this case reversed on appeal. You will see all of these resources, 3 federal prosecutors, 4 FBI agents for misdemeanor, are being wasted. You cannot find another crime in which misdemeanor or felony in which a person is convicted without believing or knowing or having reason to believe he or she did anything wrong. That's the standard that was applied in this case. The government said from the start the standard they were urging on the court was Bannon subpoenaed and did Bannon show up? Doesn't matter his reasons.
Yeah, so that would be like a strict liability crime. So remember, in certain situations like with underage, intercourse and all things like that, right? The mens rea, the person's mental state, whether they have a guilty mind or not, very important. It's actually a critical component of the entire ordeal. You've got the mens rea and the actus reus. And the defense attorney here, Mr. Schoen, is saying they were making this a strict liability crime, saying that the mental state doesn't matter. And the judge agrees with us, saying that the standard here is outside of alignment with modern day jurisprudence.
They won the case, maybe in closing today. They lost their appeal in closing today.
Oh.
The overreaching by the government in this case has been extraordinary on every level.
Yeah.
But shame on this office of the United
Yeah.
States Attorney's Office
Yeah.
and the Department of Justice
Yes.
for how far
Yes.
they put forward an argument today that completely tears asunder constitutional principle of separation of powers. They argued to the jury today that when a person gets a subpoena and executive privilege is invoked, it's for Congress to decide whether the executive privilege is valid and how broad it is.
Yeah, and they also get to decide whether it's a crime, evidently, and refer that, even though they're not in comportment with their own laws, over to the DOJ. This is what I'm talking about. He's making the exact same point that we've been making here, that they're in cahoots. They're in collusion. The DOJ is supposed to be a check on congressional power against doing this type of garbage because it is the DOJ's responsibility. If somebody takes over your responsibilities and you like doing that thing, it's part of your power. Don't you get agitated about that? Like you're an employee at work and somebody comes to you and they say, you don't get to do that anymore. That's mine. And you say, well, I get paid for that. That's my response. That's my job duty. You say, you don't get to do that. That's my role. That's how these government branches are supposed to be working. But the DOJ is in cahoots with this Congress. The Congress is not following their own rules. And they are acting, in my opinion, in a largely extrajudicial or extra constitutional manner because they are not following the rules. And if nobody's going to hold them accountable because of that, they're their own internal rules. You would expect the executive branch to punch back and say no, but they're not. It's really reprehensible.
That's absolutely false. The courts, if there's a question whether the question is justiciable in court, but if it is, only the courts can be the arbiter. They liken today Congress to a referee on a playground field with children, and that Mr. Bannon didn't want to listen to the referee. That's not how our constitutional structure works. Whether one believes executive privilege was properly invoked here, was valid, how broad it was, etc., when a former president or a current president invokes executive privilege, it's presumptively valid, period. It's not for Congress to decide that it's not valid.
Right. If Congress gets to overrule the executive branch, doesn't that make them stronger than the executive branch? Right. If Congress gets to make that decision. So theoretically, the way that this works is you've got ties, you got like tie breaks that need to happen. Two branches of government have a problem, you bring the courts in and they solve it. But these two are in cahoots, and the courts have said that the traditional levers of power, the traditional separations, these checks and balances that we all rely on, they are not allowed to happen here because the executive branch is okay with this usurpation of their power. Now, there's a lot I think that can come out about this, about like delegation doctrines and all of that stuff. That's outside the scope of this. But what he's pointing to is a clear separation of powers problem, the same one we've been articulating here.
Secondly, from the willfulness standard that the judge felt compelled to apply in this case, in which he said he's inclined to think is wrong, again, all they had to prove was that he didn't show up. That can't be the standard in a case, especially in a case that holds the potential for a jail sentence. So think about it. Any citizen gets a subpoena from Congress, hires an experienced lawyer. The lawyer tells that citizen, You may not comply. Not we ought to think about it. Former president invoked executive privilege. You may not comply. Again, you can debate whether he could have complied in part or in full. He listened to his lawyer. It's not an intuitive process. His lawyer directed him, he may not apply. The Justice Department decisions, as we've said in the past, their official position has been in the past that former and current executive branch employees, when they're served with a subpoena and executive privilege is invoked, cannot be compelled to appear, and in any event that this statute cannot be applied against them.
Yeah, and they made that argument in court. They actually, that was the estoppel argument. They said that they right, think about this, right? What happens if the public, if the DOJ, the Department of Justice, puts on their website all these memoranda? They say, this is not illegal at all. This is how we interpret this stuff. This is how it works. And you say, perfect. I'm going to go there. I've got this issue. And you, hey, say right here is how to do it. I did exactly that. And they say, well, you shouldn't have done that. That's illegal. And you say, what? It's on your website. And they say, yeah, but it involves Donald Trump. And so therefore we don't care about that. And we're going to prosecute you. And you say, what? But that's your official policy. And you're the prosecutors. You can't be changing your policy. That seems dishonest. And of course it is.
There are issues for appeal in this case that are astounding.
You argue the state.
By the way, the only, hang on. I want to thank the jury for what the effort they did, the judge, particularly the court administration here, everybody. I only have one disappointment, and that is the gutless members of that show trial committee. The J6 committee didn't have the guts to come down here and testify in open court. Thank you very much.
Does this embolden them? Mr. Bannon, does this embolden the committee?
They're all out of there.
No, but he will now. He was waiting.
And they're all off. I can hear a little bit of conversation happening between David and a reporter, but I can't really make it out. All right. And so that was Steve Bannon's reaction to the trial. Doesn't seem upset at all, basically in alignment with everything else that we've seen out of him. Just kind of like, well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We'll have to get down to this when we get down to it. Now, I've got a couple over on Rumble. We have a Rumble rant came in from Fiona Is My Bee. Says, did anyone see the J6 debacle last night? They passed off Roseanne Boylan footage as Officer Down event and then blurted out as a graphic. Timestamp is 1:47:24 on MSNBC. No, I did not see that. Yeah, Roseanne Boylan, right? She was down. She was getting hit by, a screaming officer, and she died, unfortunately. And that's interesting. I didn't see it. Didn't really watch much of it because it's such a garbage sham show trial thing. I covered a little bit of it in the morning's walk and talk, but largely it's, it's basically what you'd expect. But now, my friends, we're jumping over to your comments, your thoughts, your opinions on all of this, starting with Kenny Cole over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. He says, Rob, move the capital out of D.C. or expand the federal jury pool to all states. Only fair. I'm in favor of disbanding D.C. functionally, like functionally. Congress, you keep everything symbolically, keep all the things there, but they don't need to fly there and go to cocktail parties and stuff. Pookie's Ma is here, says, happy Friday with a party, a toot toot emoji, I think is what that one is. Shout out to Pookie's Ma with that lovely puppy. Kenny1B says, the word martyr in the dictionary. We'll have a picture of Steve Bannon. Stookie May is here, says, thanks to patriots like Bannon and Durham for revealing how nasty the District of Columbia really is. Truly eye-opening. And Stookie, you had such an amazing comment the other day. I'm gonna have to pull that one up. We're gonna do some more locals only live streams to review some of the locals stuff, because it's just or we'll say members only, right? I'll post those over to members on YouTube also. Videos that go on YouTube, I'm also posting to members on YouTube. So you'll get that. But Jeremy says, I would have said to the jury, quote, imagine if a political party with views different than yours were in power and you were not given the ability to defend yourself against bogus charges. That day may come, judge, accordingly. Your decision will set a precedent you may not be willing to live with if you are in the defendant's seat. Yeah, and it's a good argument, Jeremy. And the jurors would just say, what did you say? He's a Trumper. Don't care. But it's a good argument. I like it. Terry says, will the appeal be in another D.C. court? Yeah, so it's going to go up to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, and then it'll go up to the Supreme Court is what I would guess. But yeah, it'll go through several layers of appeals. Three Girlies is here, and shout out to the youngest girlie. Says, okay, seems like Bannon's lawyers have answered my question about who gets to determine if the privilege is valid. He said that because of separation of powers, that the committee does not get the ability to decide if the executive privilege is valid. Much like how Jamie Raskin felt that Alex Jones couldn't plead the fifth in order to get out of a subpoena. It's as if this committee thinks they have the authority to deny any sort of privilege that is asserted. Yes, they are Congress, Three Girlies. They are Congress. They can do whatever they want. And if you challenge them, how dare you? But Bannon's attorney answered the question that the committee doesn't have the authority to deny the privilege. Right. But the judge, right. This is the problem, is the judges are then saying, well, you know, the DOJ took this case and they're running with it. And they have to defer to the other branches on some of those issues. It's really bad. Heather says, you might need to go over the other thread that you posted. There are way more comments over there. Okay, so yeah, I posted another thread. I posted several threads today, and so it sounds like people might be over on the other thread just because of, I posted that first, and there was a lot of reaction over there. Yeah, they're all hanging out over there. Here, okay, here is some more. We have Thunder 7 says, there is no crueler tyranny than that which is perpetrated under the shield of law and in the name of justice. Montesquieu was a French judge, man of letters, historian, political philosopher. He is the principal source of the theory of separation of powers, which is implemented in many constitutions throughout the world. Good comment from Thunder 7. Oh, it's Jake from Oxford. Jake, this guy, way smarter than us. Let's see what he has to say. He says, hey, Rob, sorry for your loss on the right. Of course, we will continue with our W's. I know you are new to the judicial side of things, so allow me to give you a few pointers that's going to help you one day. Like when you get a partnership and you're not just a public defender. You speak of legitimacy and what the words say. That means nothing. Shall, need, should. He says those are just words. They mean nothing to us, just like innocent, guilt, or actual law. They look really good put together on paper, sounds good when you speak them to peasants, but the reality is, I was a woman when I woke up today, a bird during lunch, and back to a man by the end of the trial. Take your law books and just toss them right out the window. Just a few other pointers for you, Rob. Maybe you should exercise daily. That helps to lower the stress of losing. Maybe just go for a walk every morning or something. I liked all the other public defenders you had on the show this week. Maybe next time, though, a little bit diversity. Maybe get a minority on the show. I mean, white supremacy much? Yesterday, that guy Nate sounded extremely racist. Get better friends. Yeah, it's true. Also, it's super nice of you to keep having that homeless man from Canada on your show. Viva Las Vegas or something like that. I would love to talk to him. I wonder if he has met the greatest human ever born and the defender of the free world, Justin Trudeau. That man is a hero to freedom. Changed my mind. Anyway, hope you and the other peasants have a great weekend. Me and Pete have a busy weekend as unicorns and mermaids. I'll send you videos. Okay. So, yeah, that's Jake. You know, Jake's from Oxford. Jake is the national security advisor for Joe Biden, and he's hanging out with Pete Buttigieg this weekend. They're going to go play unicorns and mermaids, and just outstanding. So, as always, really good to have Jake come by. He's very educational. We always learn a lot when he's here. I can't wait for Nate and Viva to see that one. Okay, and so we have another one from Thunder 7 says, Rob, you know, I've calmed down a bit since hearing about the verdict, and you did warn us that it was going to be guilty. But I'm still angry. And he says, and I have no faith in the justice system anymore, not while China Joe regime holds the power. But regarding the Getter account, Bannon probably never even posted there. He has someone to manage his social accounts. He live streams his War Room show there, and now even his own show has been weaponized against him in this egregious assault on the Six. Does anyone remember the Six? Ah, the good old days. Oh, my goodness. Cindy7 says, I'm on vacation until Monday, and apparently Steve Bannon is too, until October. Appeal. Susanna says, that's a real shocker. Jason on Blast and CA says, can we authorize Bannon to use the nuclear football? He's likely to take... I can't read that one. DC says, we got Stookie says, DC is what a cesspool. John McGarvey says, expected and frankly, considering the evidence that was allowed in the trial, it was hoped for. I think there was malfeasance on the judge for not allowing in key evidence, but I don't see how any jury in any states presented with evidence they allowed could reach any other verdict. I know this is unpopular, but I don't want my side to win at the expense of our judicial system. Yeah, it's true, John. It is a good point. It's like, if you are a juror there, what are you supposed to do, right? Honestly, like the defense didn't even try, to be fair. And I think that's what Bannon's point was. He's like, look, what else could they do? They're reasonable people. We didn't even put up any evidence. Why? I couldn't say anything because the judge. So I think you're right, John. I don't think it's actually unpopular. I think Steve Bannon agrees with you. He's like, oh, no, they're nice people. It's nice to have them here. Have a good weekend. Cyanotic is here. Says, Rob, like you said, very expected. He's going to wear this like a Boy Scout patch. He'll be introduced everywhere as the man who was convicted for contempt of Congress. He is very squirrely. I love it. That's funny. Steve Bannon. Yeah, maybe I can get him on an interview. I'll introduce him that way. The man who was convicted for contempt of Congress. Subtitle of his book. The man who was convicted for contempt of Congress.com. Steve Bannon. JTTX08 says the sad thing is this is going to wake up a few people, but not enough. But as these BS events continue to build, it's going to awaken more and more. Sousen says, Rob, sometimes walking through mud is okay as long as it's being collected to sling back in the faces of those who made you walk through it. And that day is coming. Big Dog says, contempt of an illegitimate committee? The jurors apparently have not been tuning in to watching the watchers, their loss. Wild Type Mind says, is the rumor I heard true that this makes Bannon the first person ever convicted of contempt of Congress? I don't know, actually. I don't know. Jason on Blast says, yeah, pretty sure. I Am Techie says, happy Friday, Rob. Awesome. America is safer now that he's convicted. Going to be a peaceful weekend with no more killings for sure. Now, some will probably be celebrating this weekend with this news and may soon find themselves committing crimes. Thunder 7 says, sickening, sickening, sickening. And we heard from Thunder 7 more recently, and he's not as angry anymore. Susanna was here. Mr. MVP says, tainted, brainwashed minds at work, no justice anywhere. Laws are useless without justice. Only words written on paper. Hopefully the next court allows Bannon to bring forth all of his evidence. Bonnie, grouchy old cat lady, says, no surprise to me either, given the very small hula hoop. I'd have found him guilty too. Then I'd give him 24 hours in jail. John M16 says, makes sense. It was a jury trial. Had it been a bench trial, might have been different. And Rick's sick of BS says, of course they did. Swamp rats all over DC. And that is certainly the case. And those were some great comments over there from Watching the Watchers, .locals.com. And let's see what came in over on YouTube earlier today. We had Rebel from the waist down. He says, Congressman Jamie Raskin voted best hair in Washington by Pompadour magazine. Jamie Raskin. What? Like, aren't there staffers for that thing? Like, don't they just like send a staffer in there and they're like, dude, just give me like 2 minutes with this brush. 2 minutes, man. We'll get this sorted out. Thank you, Rebel from the waist down. I don't even know if that's an actual magazine, but it sounds pretty pompous. Corn Pop is here. I think he's flipping me off, which is not appropriate. Cat Zap says, hey, Cat Zap became a member, which is great. Welcome, Cat Zap. You're going to be able to join us on our morning walk and talks, which is a lot of fun. We had Jenny B says, great coverage, though I'm weeping. Will he win on appeal? Will he be free pending sentence? So, yeah, so he's free currently. It sounds like the judge didn't take him into custody and they're going to sort of allow all of that. Yeah, and so it sounds like that pop fella got the boot out of here, which is what he deserved, I think. So he got the boot out of here. And, yeah, you know, I think Bannon actually does have some pretty interesting options here. You know, normally it's like the appeal conversation is not a conversation, a really, you know, good conversation to have. But this is unusual. This is not the standard ball game, right? This is a weird January 6th fake committee that is creating their own rules. It sounds like the judge disagreed with a lot of them, right? The committee may not be the committee next year. It's a weird thing. So appeals, right? When that happens, weird things happen. And like I said, I can't think of another situation where there could possibly be more pre-trial publicity that was adversarial to your client. Like I can't make one up. Like if your client, I don't know, honestly. Like I really don't know how you could get more publicity than 8 months and then 8 separate hearings over 17 months saying you're an enemy across the entire country. Can you think of a harsher way? I don't. So Jenny B, you know, those are pretty big issues and I hope there is some consequence. Corn Pop, his cousin is here. So you got sort of this tag team, I think of trolls, I think, who are just sort of trolling in here and sort of taking turns. And I think they probably both out. I don't know. Corn Pop's cousin, he says free Corn Pop, which probably is not going to happen. So Sorry. Poo Poo Guru is here with the super chat. Thank you, Pew Pew Guru. I'm glad that you're Guru. Pew Pew Guru. There you go. Finally got it. Took me about 4 times. All right. But that, my friends, looks like it is it for us for the day. We're going to leave it there. It is Friday. I know we got a little bit of an earlier jump on the show today, but that's because, what could I do? Bannon's verdict was in. I was just sitting there like, is it 4 o'clock yet here? No? All right, let's just do it already. And so we just got it out of the way, and we're going to continue to see what happens. We'll follow up on this for sure. I'm going to expect to see a notice of appeal and all sorts of additional movement from the Bannon defense, but we'll get there when we get there. But that is it for us for the day, my friends. I want to thank everybody who was a part of the show over at our community at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Jason on Blast. Matt's mom is here. Jason says that Bannon will prevail. Matt's mom, Kincaid, is here. Sauson Academy. Susanna, 777. Phantasmagloria is in the house. And many others. Awesome community. Lots of fun. And we saw it's Jake from Oxford was there as well. Over on Rumble, Larry1, Soul Wound is there. Fed Cure, Zinc, and Ivy is here. Buffering1, RD Hayward. Shout outs to everybody. DC's not a state, no state rights from Zinc. Soul Wound is here. And Fed Cure, Digital Confusion. Digital Confusion says Honey Badger is not done. Honey Badger is just getting started. That's over on Rumble. Of course, over on YouTube, shout out to our YouTube members. I see Curtis Bartles in the house. Jenny B is here. Cool Guy, 18,000. We've got several others. Shout outs to Just Cause. D3MO, a.k.a. Austin, is here. Bannon Guilty is here. He says, Shane Sousa, Lean's in the house. And we have Office of Peace Information, Scott McClish, C. Reed, Paul Minot, Russell Wallace Warren, and others. And my friends, finally, please, please, please keep our law firm in mind if you happen to know anybody who is unfortunately charged with a crime in the state of Arizona. We have an awesome team of people. We're very passionate about the work that we do. We love to help good people get through the justice system and keep things intact. We'd love the opportunity to help. So if you happen to know anybody charged with any type of violation in Arizona, traffic, whether it's something minor or something more serious, we can help. We've got an awesome team of people. We have a lot of fun here on the show, but every day, right, I'm working hard with our team to represent our clients, the people who really need our services in court. And your referrals to us keep us busy and keep us fulfilling our mission, and I appreciate you for it. And that is it, my friends. Before we jump, of course, big shout outs to our mods who mod down the fort for us. Vienticus Prime, I think he's on vacay. K-Bean is here. I saw Zulu Zeit, Just Cause, had a birthday week, and a very based nephew. At Lean is here. Shout out to Lean, playing hooky and geomancy, as well as Lava, Java, Lava, all in the house. Big spotlight supporters are qsimple.com. That's John over at qsimple.com. Chris Romero, David B3 is here, along with Dr. EMB. And these are spotlight supporters. These are people who just support the work that we do with a little bit of extra monetary love by joining at that spotlight supporter level or over on locals at an equivalent level. And it really does go a distance, and I appreciate it. I had a very cool call today with actually locals, with the three individuals over there at locals. They're doing some cool stuff. They're really transitioning some things. They're building out some new products that I'm not even allowed to talk about. She said, please don't tell anybody. I said, I promise I won't. Okay. But it's cool stuff. And so, I have got some big visions for what I want to do with this sort of energy that we've created here in order to expand the work that we're doing. And you're supporting that. And I really am grateful for it. So thank you to everybody for your support. That is it for me for the day, my friends. And it is Friday, so we will not be here tomorrow. We'll be back on Monday. I'm going to be working on some other stuff over the weekend with some shorts and some maybe some pre-recorded videos. But certainly we'll have the walk and talks over the weekend, at least on Saturday. Sometimes I take Sundays off. But if you want to join that, come check us out on our community forums. Otherwise, my friends, it's Friday. Hopefully you're having an amazing start to your weekend. You've got nice dinner cooking, or maybe you've eaten it already, or if you're in Thailand watching, it's morning there, you've got some nice breakfast. Whatever it is, I hope you do get some time to unplug, spend some time with friends and family, relax a little bit, because we've got to recharge those batteries. We're going to be back here to do this all again on Monday, and I look forward to seeing you then. Have a great night. Have a great weekend, my friends. Until the next one. Bye-bye.